Think about the one person you would call at 2 inches the morning if everything fell apart. Just one person. You know exactly who it is. Now here is the question no one thinks to ask. Did your ancestor, standing barefoot on the African savanna 100,000 years ago, have someone like that too? The answer is not what you expect, and it rewrites everything you think you know about friendship. Most people assume friendship is a modern luxury, something that came after civilization, after cities and coffee shops and phones. The kind of connection you build when you have free time and safety and nothing chasing you. But that assumption is wrong. Deeply, provably wrong. Friendship did not appear after survival got easier. Friendship is what made survival possible in the first place. Let us go back. Way back. Before language existed in the way you use it now. Before agriculture. Before fire was reliably controlled. Your ancestor woke up every morning in a world that was actively trying to kill them. Predators, disease, rival groups, starvation, the cold. And the only tool they had against all of it was other people. Not weapons, not walls, people. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying the social architecture of early humans. His research produced what is now called Dunbar's number, the idea that the human brain can maintain stable, meaningful relationships with roughly 150 people at a time. But buried inside that number is something even more interesting. Within every group of 150, there was always a much smaller inner circle, usually around 5 people. And those 5 were not just allies. They were something closer to what you would call, today, a best friend. Dunbar found this pattern across hunter-gatherer societies that still exist, across archaeological records, across primate social groups. The number keeps appearing. 5. The tight inner ring. The people your ancestor would do almost anything for. The people who got the best cut of meat. The people who were warned first when danger was coming. But how do we know this was not just cooperation? How do we know it was actually something like friendship, with real emotional weight behind it? Here is where it gets remarkable. Primatologist Frans de Waal spent years observing chimpanzees, our closest living relatives. He documented something that changed how scientists understood animal social bonds. Chimpanzees form what de Waal called preferential relationships. 2 individuals who consistently sought each other out, who shared food voluntarily, beyond what hierarchy demanded, who groomed each other longer than necessary, who showed visible distress when separated. These were not alliances of convenience. The behavior patterns looked, in every measurable way, like grief when those bonds were broken, like joy when they were restored. Your ancestors were doing the same thing, long before the word friend existed. Now think about what that means inside a survival context. You are a hunter-gatherer. You wake before dawn. The group is deciding whether to chase a herd north or forage south. There is no leader in the way you understand leadership, no vote. What happens instead is that the 5 or 6 people who are most bonded to the most other people in the group quietly pull the direction. Not through power, through trust, through the invisible gravity of deep relationship. Evolutionary psychologist David Geary described this as the social brain hypothesis in action. The human brain did not grow bigger to solve math problems. It grew bigger to track other people, to remember who helped you, who betrayed you, who you could count on when everything broke down. The neocortex, the part of your brain doing your most complex thinking right now, expanded primarily to manage the demands of deep social bonds. Your intelligence, in a very literal evolutionary sense, exists because your ancestors needed to maintain friendships. That is not a metaphor. That is biology. But here is where it gets personal and strange. Researchers studying ancient burial sites have found something archaeologists did not expect. Tools buried alongside bodies, ochre pigment, flowers, in some cases, animal bones placed with care. This was not random. Objects placed with the dead almost always have a pattern. They belonged either to the person who died or they were placed there by someone close to them, someone who was performing grief, someone who was saying something that words had not yet fully evolved to express. That is a best friend doing the only thing available to them, marking the end of a relationship that mattered more than most things in their world. Anthropologist Margaret Malone, studying burial practices at sites across the Middle East and Africa, noted that the effort required to bury someone with ceremony was enormous by hunter-gatherer standards. It cost time. It cost resources. The group had to stop moving, had to stay in one place, had to be vulnerable. The only reason a group of survivors would take that risk was if the loss of that person created a wound that demanded acknowledgement, demanded ritual. They were grieving the way you grieve. Now, think about what your own best friendships actually do for you, and be honest about it. They regulate your nervous system. Studies from the University of Virginia found that people facing perceived threats, like a steep hill they were asked to climb, literally rated the hill as less steep when a close friend was standing beside them. The physical world changed based on who was next to them, not the hill. Their perception of the hill, their body's readiness to attempt it. Your ancient ancestor, standing at the edge of an unknown forest, deciding whether to enter, would have done the same calculation. And the math changed entirely depending on whether their closest person was beside them. This is why loneliness is not just sad, it is dangerous. Deeply dangerous. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo spent 20 years studying loneliness and found that chronically lonely people show elevated cortisol levels, disrupted sleep, accelerated cognitive decline, and immeasurably shorter lifespans. Not because loneliness is a modern emotional problem, but because your nervous system treats the absence of a close bond as a survival emergency. It triggers the same cascades as physical threat. Because for most of human history, being alone actually was a death sentence. Your body has not received the update that tells it you live in an era where being alone no longer means being eaten. And here is the twist. The part that makes all of this land differently. The ancient world was harder in almost every measurable way than yours. More dangerous, more painful, less comfortable, less certain. And yet within that world, people formed bonds of extraordinary depth. Bonds that were not built on shared interests or convenience or compatible schedules. They were built on something raw, shared survival, shared fear, shared fire. The knowledge that this specific person had your back when it counted, that they had stayed, that they had shown up. Hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologist Kim Hill showed that individuals consistently sacrificed personal resources for their close allies, even at a measurable cost to themselves. Not out of calculation. Out of something that looked, by every behavioral measure, like love. Your capacity for deep friendship did not come from civilization. It was not something culture invented to make you happier. It is older than agriculture, older than language as you understand it, older than fire in a controlled hearth. It is the oldest technology your species ever developed. And tonight, when you sit across from the person you would call at 2 inches the morning, or when you think about them, or when you text them something that only they would understand, you are not doing something modern. You are not doing something soft, or optional, or particular to your era. You are doing exactly what your ancestors did. Crouched around a fire 100,000 years ago, watching the dark at the edge of the world together. The friend was never a luxury. The friend was always the plan.